This month is the 25th anniversary of the premiere of The Sopranos, the 1999 crime drama that would herald a massive shift in prestige television. Was it really the first out of the gate? There's a lot of contenders for who helped TV mature as an art form first, whether that be Hill Street Blues or The Rockford Files. Personally speaking, my vote on that is always going to go to something like Twin Peaks. But no matter how you slice it, The Sopranos unarguably is the show that put HBO on the map and set the stage for almost 3 decades of prestige TV, an era that seems to be coming to an end. That's been said by so many people that it's almost as much of a meme as the show itself has become. And in those 25 years, so many people have tried to take a crack at analyzing it, because there's a lot to work with. The Sopranos was and still is a very odd beast compared to a lot of other shows. There are so many elements that often give it a dreamlike feel despite the premise. Just as a couple of examples. Our lead wise guy, Tony Soprano, is able to deduce which of his enforcers has betrayed him in the middle of a fever dream. And, in a later example, hallucinates a whole other identity for himself when he's on the verge of death. Elements like that and the still famous ending have cemented it on the psyche of our pop culture consciousness forever. But that's not necessarily what we're going to do today, since there are so many great pieces of criticism and analysis that have come out since it premiered. What we are going to try and do together is figure out a mystery of our own. Why was show creator David Chase so concerned right before the show was ready to premiere? It's a mystery that we can actually solve really quickly, since Chase wasn't trying too hard to hide it. Rather by accident, The Sopranos was going to premiere a little less than 2 months before another project with an extremely similar premise. That project was Analyze This. And at the time, Chase had every reason to be scared. Both were about a mob boss who secretly sees a therapist. This one was directed by Harold Ramis, who had Caddyshack and Groundhog Day on his resume as director, and a little-known film called Ghostbusters as his most prominent acting credit. It was sporting the likes of Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal in its main roles, both at the heights of their careers at the time. This was right before De Niro would start a 20-plus year streak starring in an increasingly cringy series of roles, largely riffing off of his own persona.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? And who else are you talking to? Are you talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here, so you must be talking to me.
One of Hollywood's biggest comedic names and 2 of its biggest actors competing against Chase. And a lead actor whose best known role before Tony Soprano was a small role in the film Get Shorty, where he played a character who might as well be a parody of Tony years before he even existed. James Gandolfini, while a once-in-a-generation talent, had not yet been given the chance to really show what a phenomenal actor he was in a leading role. And though the pilot was already in the can, Chase had actually considered trying to expand it into a film if it didn't go through. He had every right, on paper, to worry which might become the better-known property of the two. Of course, we have a gift that Chase didn't at the time, which is called hindsight. And now, The Sopranos has become an institution unto itself. But how similar were they really, beyond the logline and the date of release? How does each project treat the same kind of role, the dramatic irony of a crime boss seeking out therapy? The first big one they both definitely tackle is the stigma of seeking out therapy in the first place. Even if The Sopranos took this far more seriously and didn't turn Tony into a joke. So much of the show's early run and the plot of Analyze This involves both Tony and Paul Vitti, De Niro's guy, hiding this from everyone else in their life so that they're not emasculated in the process of not being traditionally masculine enough for their jobs. A major difference is that Tony is hiding this from both his family and his enforcers, while Paul is single and ready to mingle. Something else that needs to be highlighted, in terms of the 2 therapists they both end up seeing. Dr. Jennifer Melfi is both Italian, which makes Tony feel more comfortable with her considering they share the same heritage, and a woman, meaning that the very heterosexual and misogynistic Tony spends more time trying to impress her and failing to seduce her than actually working on his own mental health. In contrast, Ben Sobel is both a man and also Jewish, meaning that the film gets a lot of mileage out of both Italian and Jewish stereotypes.
My name is Ben Sobel, Leone. Ben Soblione. I'm also known as Benny the Groin, Sammy the Schnoz, Elmer the Fudd, Tubby the Tuba, and once as Miss Phyllis Levine.
It factors in that Paul sees Ben as more of a surrogate brother than as a potential lover, meaning that the two spend way more time insulting each other and getting on each other's nerves than Dr. Melfi does repeatedly having to reject Tony's advances. To The Sopranos' credit, the show is fully aware of how sleazy and inappropriate, and that's putting it mildly, that Tony's behavior towards Dr. Melfi is. And the show spends a lot of time exploring his own latent misogyny and his abject refusal to make any kind of real self-improvement as a person. Granted, this is still made by a creative team that skewed almost entirely white and male, which is no surprise in Hollywood. That is not to say that The Sopranos has aged perfectly within 25 years of increasing pushes towards true equity in the film industry. There's quite a bit that has aged really poorly. But as a time capsule, during a time with a lot more systemic inequality, it sheds a light on the prevailing mentality of that time. And that is not intended as "it was a different time" defense, but rather trying to both appreciate what works about it while also acknowledging how much of it is definitely reductive and regressive. The show, at least, does not ever try to frame Tony Soprano as a good or decent person. He is a vicious psychopath who takes genuine joy in torturing and killing other people, while also exploring the circumstances that led to him being this way. It does this without moralizing or the awkward kind of soapbox that can make an audience feel like its creators think that they're too stupid to be able to understand the subject it's trying to explore. Analyze This does not really do Analyze That. It's very much a 90s studio comedy, if anything the kind of thing that The Sopranos was a reaction to. A barrage of decades of jokes about Italians as mobsters. It was pretty clear that the film's own financial success at the time had some degree of influence over Chase and his creative team moving forward, as the series veered farther and farther away from the stories that people most expected them to tell. It's ironic because despite the fact that The Sopranos has become a sort of giant meme today,
woke up this morning, got some gabagoo. I even got some gabagoo from a Scooby-Doo.
it really was trying to grapple with why American, and predominantly not Italian audiences, could not get enough of this type of story. It was not the Godfathers or Goodfellas that this series took issue with. If anything, Tony and his enforcers are shown continually referencing and expressing admiration for those films.
Just when I thought I was out, pull me back kicking.
This ain't negotiation time. This is Scarface, final scene, f***ing bazookas under each arm. Say hello to my little friend.
It was the legion of imitators and parodies that turned the nuanced and complicated subjects of those films and turned themes of generational violence into jokes. These films and The Sopranos are so ubiquitous, so well known, that you have absolutely referenced them. So there is an irony that The Sopranos became the very thing it was trying not to be, even if it is clear that its cast and crew do appreciate how much love there is for it 25 years later. This is not to say that no one should joke about The Sopranos. There's still plenty of really good ones out there, and the show itself is quite funny at times. What's the point of liking something if you can't have fun with it? The intention here isn't really to shame anyone, but rather think for a second how we got here in the first place. I am not going to pretend that I've never joked about The Sopranos with friends, even if it's more about plot details that I thought were funny than just making fun of everyone's accents. It's probably for the best that Analyze This is now remembered as being the lesser of the two in comparison to The Sopranos and its ubiquity. It's not that it's the worst film I've ever seen, but it's not one that cared enough about its own premise to stay in people's minds. Harold Ramis had created classics already. People still remember Ghostbusters and Groundhog Day to this day, largely because of him. But this time, and its sequel, not so much. Probably for the best. It means that in the end of the day, the project that no one expected to last as long as it did ended up being the one that everyone thinks about when they think about HBO and when they think about prestige television.